and people being healed. And so he said, I think I've got something that can help you, and through prayer and through, my help, I think you can conquer this. So we went to him, and there was a couple of different times that we went in for Billy Joe to receive some medicine. And then last summer, June, July, his blood count was great, and he was feeling wonderful. His glands had all, gone down, and so anyway, all through the summer he was feeling good, and then August at Word Explosion, the gland on the right side began to swell just a little bit, and he had an appointment. He went in, and the specialist said to him, even though your blood count is good, he said, I'm concerned about that gland. I don't understand what's going on, and I really feel like you need to go to MD Anderson and have this checked further. So some of you may remember during Word Explosion and during those weeks of September, he would many times sit down here on the altar when he would pray for people because he was tired. And we ended up going to MD Anderson, and the doctor checked him there and said, your blood count looks good, but he said, these glands, he said, it's obvious that, there's something going on here. And he said, but we want to schedule an appointment to come in another month, or in November. And so anyway, we left and came back from that, and his immune system had gotten down. And he began to get a sore throat. Didn't think much of it at first. After a few days, he realized this is bad. And he went to see his doctor. At first, they thought it was strep throat. And the medicine didn't really help. And he went in to see the specialist again right after that. And the specialist said, this is not strep throat. And this is a viral infection. I'm going to give you some medicine, but I want you to come back in 2 days. He did. And when he came back, and of course he had become dehydrated, and they gave him some hydration in his body. But when he came back, he said, you need to go in the hospital immediately, and I'm going to call, and you can go on in. So we did, and we transferred actually from one hospital to another, ended up at the cancer treatment hospital here in Tulsa, and he needed nutrition, so they began to give it to him through the IV, nutrition, protein, and took more tests. They found that he had Richter's transformation, which means it transformed into lymphoma at that time. That's when we announced to you all. During that time of the viral infection in his throat, it had gone down into his esophagus. He had become very weak because he couldn't eat. He couldn't drink. It was hard for him to. And so he lost weight during that time as well. We began to try to build him back up. I talked with, many people in this body had given me a lot of information, and of course, different ones had, the Copelands as well as others had recommended that I talk with Dr. Colbert, which we knew Dr. Colbert anyway, and we talked with him, and he'd given us a lot of good information, and so we were working on things from a nutritional standpoint as well. It's just that he didn't want to eat. His body had swollen from the glands draining in his body and going into what they call the third space, and so it was a lot of pressure on his organs in his body. And so during this time, we went to MD Anderson for treatment. The first treatment that we went through down there, the wonderful thing was that the cancer cells started dying. The bone marrow started reproducing. I got up and announced that on a Sunday morning, and the very next day, he got hit with another attack in his physical body. And an infection, a couple of different infections, we'd gotten healed of the viral infection, but anyway, a couple other infections had come, and so we ended up again in the hospital, and his body became weaker, and this was when we were, having lots of prayer going on, of course, and then toward the latter part of it, we had to go on down to MD Anderson, and They were trying to stabilize him before they could do any other treatment, but he was so weak in his body by this point that it was very, very hard. And we had people go down with us. The Lord spoke to my heart that Sunday morning early and said, you need to take a couple of people with you to pray round the clock down there, as well as the people back here, and then others that just, felt like they were supposed to go and help us with getting through the system and everything if we needed that. But anyway, we had people that were in his ICU room that were praying round the clock, 24/7. We were with him, and you could only have about 3 or 4 in there at once, and sometimes we went beyond that. But anyway, they were very wonderful people working with us. We had one of the doctors that ended up coming down that was a doctor here that felt like he was to come down as well. And so I'd asked him if he would kind of, talk with the other medical team people there. And that was wonderful because he had an opportunity to kind of explain us because we were different, And, we weren't loud, we weren't offensive, but we were very intense. And they said, we have never seen this kind of support with anybody in all the time that we've been here. They just said, because we were in and out, changing shifts, of praying. And so, anyway, we got an opportunity. One nurse, it was interesting, one of the nurses, she came out, she said to one of our daughters, she said, can I ask you something? She said, every time I go in and out, because she had to go in every few minutes to an hour, every time I go in, everybody that goes in that room, they all speak in a language that is different than anything I've heard, she said, and they all seem to know what they're saying, but I don't know what anybody's saying. And anyway, it was really sweet because she said, I'm not trying to be offensive or anything. And so our daughter was able to share with her, and we had other opportunities to just be a witness, of Jesus' love and appreciating the medical people, because you know what? My husband's always felt this, that God gives medicine as a gift as well as prayer for healing and nutrition, all the different aspects. He's preached this before. And so anyway, we were making sure we affirmed people as well. But in the last point of latter part of his life, those last few hours, I had asked our friend to talk to them and just say, when that moment comes, if he is, if it looks like that he's passed, I need them to understand I need to spend time with him in that room alone because I've got to be able to pray for him to be raised up. I don't want them to be, out there wondering what's going on. And so anyway, he did, and they were very kind. I stayed in the room with him. The family, all of our family were there, all the kids, and we all went in there in Grand. We were all in there part of that time, and then they left out, and I just stayed in there a little over 3 hours just praying for him to come back because, I didn't feel like it was selfish. I felt like that was good. And interesting thing, Billy Joe had not been able to smile for about 3 weeks, 2 or 3 weeks. It was just very, very hard for him to smile. And he'd do a quickie, but it was just real hard. He was so focused on trying to be healed, and there was such an intense thing that was going on in his body. And so anyway, when he slipped out of his body, this smile just came on his face, his teeth showing, and he's just like this, a smile on his face, and just stayed there. And so all through those 3.5 hours that I was praying for him to be raised up from the dead, and that the glory of God would be revealed there in that situation. And then all of a sudden, I just had this peace. I looked at him, and I had that peace in my heart where he is. To be absent from the body, of course, is to be present with the Lord. I know that, but I I had this release in me, and I just began to worship God with this